Hey friends, I'm still kind of in the middle of sitting here sowing some Celosia seeds, which I'm actually going to share with you guys today. But let me just finish this row. You want to see what I'm doing here? So I'm just going to do one more row, and then we can actually talk. So I'm so glad you guys have decided to join me here. And all right, so hey friends, welcome to Seed Starting Saturday. It is your friend Lisa Ziegler, and I am so glad you're here today. Have a lot of fun stuff and a little bad news, but we'll talk about the bad news later. Let's look at the good stuff first. So if you're new here, I am, let's see, what am I? I'm a cut flower farmer, educator, have a great website called thegardenersworkshop.com, where we are a virtual online learning center and a lot of resources, y'all, lots of free resources. Then we have online courses, whether you want to learn how to have a little cutting garden in your backyard as a gardener, or if you want to start a flower farming business, as well as other flower-based businesses. We have it all over the Gardener's Workshop, as well as I have an online store that just pretty much sells the same tools, seeds, and supplies that I actually use here on my farm and that you'll see me using in our week-to-week meeting here. So it is the end of March, or kind of almost the end of March, right? And we are knee-deep in kind of like starting life, right? Spring is just around the corner, and I'm super excited. There's a lot of things going on, and I've got a lot of really exciting things to show you. You can see one of them over here above my shoulder. That's something that we did here together 2 weeks ago. Those are some sunflowers. And I have other things that I want to share with you, but just a rundown of what you're going to hear about today is, first off, I am going to make some small soil blocks, and I am going to sow some Celosia seeds. We have just started our warm season. Literally this week, we are just now starting to start our warm season seeds. And I'm going to sow some Celosia and kind of talk you through why and how and why I start the Celosias that I'm starting at this time of the year early. Then I'm going to go through and we're going to start my early bird sunflower seeds for this week. And I'm going to tell you all about how we have experimented through the years and found that sunflowers tolerate more cool than we think, so we can get them started earlier so that we can have sunflowers even earlier for our flower farming businesses, or even in your own little back garden, right? Who's not ready for a sunflower, right? I mean, in the big picture, we're all really ready for a lot of great sunflowers. Then we're going to take a look at my salvia that we all started here together, y'all. Really sad story. Not totally sad, just partially sad. Totally operator-induced error, and I just kind of like love sharing my ups and downs with folks. So I'm just looking around and thinking, all right, so what I want to do first here this morning is, first off, welcome everybody. I see lots of people commenting and sharing the sunflower emoji. And friends, if you don't know this, the reason folks use the sunflower emoji is we ask anyone that is a student of any of our online courses, that is our big school farming and flower business courses, as well as our on-demand courses. We just love seeing who they are, and other students love connecting, as well as friends. If you see somebody that put a sunflower emoji and you're wondering about our online courses, ask them. We want you to do that. Word of mouth is our best reference, and can tell you what we're all about. So I just mentioned that we are just now getting started with our warm season seeds. For point of reference, my typical or historic last frost date is mid-April. And so for warm season seeds, I typically begin starting them 4 to 6 weeks before that date. And if you want to know like what I start and how I kind of figure out those weeks, there's a great blog that was just posted not long ago that I forget what it's at. You have to go to the blog over at thegardenersworkshop.com and go to the resources, and the blog and podcast are under there. And it'll kind of show you what I group in the 4 to 6 week. And then I have my 2 to 3 week before planting time. So Celosias are one of the earliest ones we start because they fall into that 4 to 6 week categories. What other things? Tomatoes, peppers, ageratums, and basil, those all kind of fall in. But because I am such a Celosia lover, y'all, Celosias are in our top 5 cash crops, as well as it's a huge pollinator, beneficial insect flower. So there's a lot of reasons that I'm always eager to get it started. So I'm just going to put the camera down, and I am just going to just really start doing this. Daniel, I totally appreciate you saying that. Y'all, if you don't know Daniel Chavey of Petal Pickers, Daniel is not only a longtime friend, we met through our courses. He was a student in my course first, and then he went on to take all of the others. But Daniel, this week, gifted me, y'all. I got a box in the mail. Daniel ships his flowers that he grows all over the United States. And he shipped me a box of the most beautiful tulips you have ever seen. It was like the biggest surprise. The girls at the shop, just at the warehouse, just went nuts. So Daniel, I'm glad you posted on here. It's good to know that you're on here. And I wanted to say thank you so much. I'm going to be carrying those tulips to church tomorrow, and then of course bringing them home right afterwards. And so I'm really excited about that. And thank you so much. So check out Petal Pickers. If you need to send flowers to somebody, he's the man that you want to do that with. So I am going to tilt this down so y'all can just have a look at what I'm doing here, right? So the reason, if you see this is actually like a little lab pan. It's aluminum is what the significant part of this is. Aluminum does not have any static electricity, and static electricity is not your friend when you're sowing seeds. If you're using a little plastic cup or dish, I'm telling you folks, you are literally chasing the seed all over. And when you combine no static, and you can find these little dishes, they actually come with our kits, but you can buy them. They're a couple of bucks just for convenience at thegardenersworkshop.com. The combination of no static electricity and friends using a toothpick, and I have taken the liberty to actually spit in the corner of this tray before I went live because I was not spitting on YouTube, and dip your toothpick into the saliva. Saliva is stickier than water. And if you can see this, there's not a ton of seeds in here. You want to do it so that they scatter. And that's the whole point. And I'm just going to try to do this and do it quickly. What I am literally doing is just firmly seeding the seed on the surface, because that's what Celosia requires. And if you notice, I am literally just touching the seed, the toothpick to the seed, and the seed is literally jumping right on. I don't know if y'all can see that. I'll put it where the white is. If you can see the little bump on the end there. And I'm just pushing it after I put it on the block and kind of wipe it to the side, and that gets the seed off. And then I just give it a little smush push, and that makes sure that the seed is making good contact with the soil. And let me tell you what's going through some people's minds right now. Oh my gosh, you do how many of these? Well, let me just tell you that when we were in high production, we would do about 100,000 seedlings through the year, through across the seasons. And what you're seeing right now, it would have been on a bigger tray, but what you're seeing right now is exactly how we do it. And I'm going to, once I've done. All right. So I've already done these. All right. So these are my seed sowing must-haves: toothpick, spit, and an aluminum tray. So for you folks that may be thinking that this, oh my gosh, how this sounds like, it looks like it takes you forever. Let me tell you how much quicker soil blocking is for us. The way that we have set up our setup here on the farm to be commercial flower farmers. I have no greenhouses, no hoop houses. I'm in the middle of the city, not an option. So I had to make it work. I'm sitting in a big work building, which is just basically a big garage. And in there, I have a 10 by 10 room that has racks, grow lights. And so soil blocking filled my dream of being able to become a flower farmer because I figured out how to do it quickly, conveniently, and I could start a lot of plants in a very small space. So Celosia is just one of many, but no matter what I'm sowing, I do what I just did, placing one seed in each block. You know what that means? No thinning. What you just saw me do is pretty much the end of me touching the blocks. There's never any thinning. There's never any potting up. They are going to grow in this block until they go to the garden. And with that said, let me show you some samples. So look behind me right here. See that light? Let me grab some of these guys. So first off, I want to show you, you know that I'm doing experiments here on the farm for cool flowers. We're trying to push the limits, cool flowers, which are cool season hardy annuals. There's also vegetables that fall into this family. We finished planting our regular planting of cool flowers last week or a week before. And so we're trying to see how far into the spring season I can go. And so I just wanted to show you, these are snapdragons that I just took off the heat this morning. And this is Rocket. And we started Rocket and Opus because we know now that they will perform later into the season. So we're just going to see how it goes. And so you can see the great germination. And then look at these guys. Another experiment we are really doing a lot of, and you can see Bobo ran out of seeds over here. So this is Denver Daisy. We are pushing the limits on all the these hardy annual Rudbeckias, especially the ones that have the fall look about them, the darker colors, to see how late in the season we can plant them in the effort to get them to bloom late summer and into the fall. So you can see that there's no thinning involved, y'all. Super amazing time saver. And then we don't pot them up. And look at this. So let's see. This is sunflowers. They were started February 17th. So they are what? A month old. They're ready to go to the garden. They were never potted up. Look how gorgeous and beautiful they are. Let's see if this will work. These have not been watered yet this morning, y'all. They're kind of falling apart. They're kind of attached to their neighbor. I'm not going to do that. Let's take a look. See that mat under there? Literally, I will disconnect the clusters from one another and then pick up a whole cluster of 20, put it on my hand, and literally just break them apart. Y'all, you do not have to baby these things. They are so much tougher than we are. And this is Feverfew Vigimo Sunny Ball. And Feverfew is a huge crop for us. We grow like 5 or 6 different varieties. And this one is one that we have planted later in the season like now. So I would recommend trying that if you want to. That's kind of a sure bet, as well as straw flowers are. This is experiment 1. The ones we just looked at that I just started are experiment number 2. So you can see how healthy and happy these guys are. So there is no potting up. So soil blocking truly is not only space savvy and super easy to take care of once you figure it out, but it grows amazing transplants. So especially if you're trying to start a lot. So let me put back my seeds here. And so I want to bring my tray over and we're going to sow some more Celosias, but I want to make the last set of blocks to go in the next tray so that I can kind of show you how I do all of that. Now, if you're new to soil blocking and you feel like you need more help than what, I'm just kind of ping-ponging around telling you about a lot of different stuff, I have an online course called Seed Starting Made Easy. It's like $25, I think. You can find it on our website under the on-demand courses. And it takes you from beginning to end for soil blocking, from seed to garden, and then also how to direct seed. So this tray will go in on the Seedling heat mat when we're done here. I'm running out of room, y'all. And I am going to now, I'm going to make some blocks. And when I come back, after we make these blocks, y'all, I'm going to be sharing with you why I start the specific Celosias I start now, and more importantly, the ones I do not start this early for reasons we'll talk about in a moment. So let me grab my tray. All right. And as usual, I was a little overzealous with the water, and there's a little bit more water in this tub than I want. You know, soil blocking mix, you can find the recipe or you can find the ready-made mix like I'm using here over on our website. It's 3 parts of soil to 1 part water, and I unfortunately overmeasured, and there is a little bit of water in here, but that's really okay, because one of the things you'll learn, it's easier to get the blocks to come out of the blocker when the soil is borderline too wet versus too dry. So you can see that I have really wet blocking mix here, and I am just gonna, it's a little deep there. I'm just pushing it down, and you can see that I'm wiggling it. That's just really making sure that all of the chambers are full. And before I pull it up, I'm just kind of scraping it to the side, and that breaks any suction that actually happens. And that's because of the moisture. And so this is a potato masher, y'all. Best tool ever for doing this. Now I'm going to show you, I've already done most of this tray. Let's see how I can do this, y'all. This is just full of experiments. This is a tray that I needed more blocks, and I'll tell you about that Celosia in a minute. And so this is just the last set, and I am just giving a push and a pull, and there you go. Notice how some of the edges are just a little pushed up. First off, that's not a problem, but that happens because I literally just mixed the water in the soil right before we started. It definitely does better if you let it sit for a little while, like, you know, put the water in and mix your soil blocking mix up an hour or more before you're going to do it. But frankly, that doesn't happen for us. So that is actually how you make the blocks. And y'all, there are so many videos over on my website of actually showing you how to make the blocks. So I don't want to waste a lot of our time doing that here, because I want to talk about Celosia, and I want to sow as we're actually doing it. So the way that we mark trays for sunflowers and for sunflowers and these trays and the foam tray, sorry, y'all, I had a little brain air there, is with tape. This is actually painter's tape, but you can use masking tape, which I think masking tape lasts longer holding onto the trays. However, it kind of rips up when you're pulling it apart like this. I'm just finding, because painter's tape is made to ultimately be peeled off, I find that it's kind of peely on these trays. So I have just put on here the name of the variety and the date. And another tip is I like putting my name tags, I'll show you. I like putting my tape with the writing, because, you know, I'm watering. It's sitting in, you know, underneath lights or wherever, and I'm watering, and I want to look and see what it is. I want to be able to read that tape, so I kind of put it on the end and put it so I can read it without having, I mean, it doesn't sound like much until you have 50 trays. You have to like pull out and try to figure out what it is, right? All right, so that's how I mark it. And so I'm going to sow more Celosia, and I'm going to let y'all watch me do that. But first, well, I guess I can do that here. So first, I'm going to just dump my seeds right in. So one of the varieties of Celosia that we added last year, and I do not know how to pronounce it, y'all, so I'm just going to spell it. You can find it on our website. I guess it's Higyoku, Higyoku. And it's a scarlet red bloom, and it's really, really beautiful. And it has bronze-like foliage, and I love this stuff. Well, this is what we need. Oh, I poured too much in there. So you don't want to have that many seeds in there, because it just gets aggravating. You kind of lose the whole point of why you're doing it this way. All right, so let me get this so y'all can see what I'm doing. So again, I'm just scattering the seeds about. And once again, I am not, and this is not good. This is me starting the wrong way. This is, you know, you get your own little pattern of going, and I'm right-handed, so this seems to be the way for me to go. So I am just Literally, I have moistened the toothpick with a little saliva, and I am just touching it to the seed in this aluminum tray that has no static electricity and just sowing on. Now, the reason I am starting these specific Celosias and perhaps not some others is because these are branching Celosias. And when I have a branching annual in the back of my mind, what I'm thinking is, okay, even if the weather doesn't cooperate, because first off, Celosias love heat. You don't want to plant these outdoors in chilly conditions. They are not going to be happy. They're just going to sit there and freeze. They're going to sit there and shiver. You know how you see the emojis of that? Well, that's basically what Celosia does, which leads you to a whole season of not good performance. You want to just keep Celosia happy from the minute it's born, which is why soil blocking does so great. It doesn't get root bound. And that's why I think we excel at growing Celosias, really, is because we soil block. So I only start in this first round of Celosias branching Celosias, because what that means, let's just say that these guys are getting gorgeous at 4 weeks. They're just growing along very happy. And first off, I want to say 2 things. I have work going on outside my door, so if you hear odd noises, that's what it is. And secondly, with me talking, y'all be able to keep track. I may just lose track of which block I'm on. So y'all may notice that. So when it's time for these seedlings to be planted outdoors, meaning they're just gorgeous, right? They're the right size. Everything's going great, but guess what? It's either going to rain for 40 days and 40 nights, and you can't plant them for whatever reason. That when I have branching plants, that means that I have the option to pinch them. Now, no, that's a big question I get often. You can pinch any annual crop that branches, right? Pinching induces branching earlier in the growing cycle. My rule of thumb is I will pinch, and I will tell you that it all often depends on how the schedule is going here. We pinch 50% of our plants before they're planted while they're in soil blocks. I've never done this in plug trays, so I cannot comment on that. But the plan is to pinch 50% of all branching annuals, except I do not do zinnias just because there's too many of them. Because pinching buys you time. So they're looking beautiful and you can't plant them. Well, guess what? If you pinch them, you buy yourself about 2 more weeks of excellent growing conditions in the blocks. So my theory is that I would never start the single stem, very pricey seed Celosias like Spring Green, like Neo, like Bombay. I would never start them early when there is a higher risk of not being able to plant them at the proper time. They'll get started here in a couple of weeks, but they aren't the first go-to. Now, y'all, I totally forgot. So let me give you another little tip. I got 2 seeds on that one. What I normally do if I ever have to stop what I'm doing right now, just going from seed to block, is I'll stick my toothpick in the last block I did, because you think you're going to be able to tell where you are, but sometimes it's really, really hard. So I am picking up the Celosia seed with the toothpick that's moistened with saliva out of this lab pan that is made out of aluminum, which means no static electricity. And for convenience, you can just find those on our website. Our soil blocking kits and complete seed starting kits come with this, as well as there's other freebies in there. And I'm not going to say what they are because they change from time to time. But I will tell you that we just updated that, and it is really, really a great value. All right. So I would resist until you're a little later in the season, meaning for me, I'm going to wait until probably about 3 weeks is when the single, see y'all, I just lost my place. So easy to happen when you're talking. That's why when I'm doing this alone, I mean, for production, I don't even have the radio on. I just sit here in total silence and think. I write books in my head, right? All right, y'all, we're almost done, and then I'll review all of this. All right, so those need to go back. All right, so we've sown all of these seeds, and I want to say a couple things. If you love this green tray, whether they're in or out of stock right now, I can't say because that comes and goes. These come from England. But if they're out of stock, you definitely want to get on our wait list, because what happens is when the containers land here from England, the people that are on that list get emails first and get the first opportunity. And it is not uncommon for us to sell out of them before they even really become public. So you want to do that. This holds 100, which is like for me on our farm here now, the step that we're in these days, this is like the perfect size. All right, so let's just recap about Celosia sowing. Celosia seed goes on the surface of the tray, on the surface of the soil. You need to use, we use a toothpick moistened with saliva, dipping them out of an aluminum little pan so that there is absolutely no static. I don't care how tiny your seed is. You do it this method, it's not a problem anymore. We dump our seed in here, use the toothpick moistened with saliva to touch it to one seed and place one seed on one block. Never any thinning. And we also, because we time our seed starting properly, meaning you have to not start too soon, because y'all, here's the news flash. For many of us, there are where I am in mid-Atlantic, southeastern Virginia, even though it sounds like I'm from Georgia, we can almost start seeds year round, because you just have to figure out what seeds are to be started at what time in your area. There's cool season seeds and there's warm season. And you can just really, really garden almost year round for us. But those folks in the north, you can start so much earlier and go so much longer when you embrace all the different methods. So seed starting with soil blocking is pretty daggum amazing. And I want to also just say, I know a lot of people struggle with snapdragons. Snapdragons are just like Celosia. That's what made me bring these out here. The problem is they are surface sown, and you have troubles retaining moisture on the surface. And because I was taught by Elliot Coleman, who was like the guru, leader of organic market farming 40 years ago, and I learned from him about 30 years ago about soil blocking, he does not recommend using domes because it is so easy to introduce disease like dampening off if you don't really monitor very closely. Well, friends, let's just be honest right here. I am in my seed starting room once a day. In the morning, first thing, water, take care of things, move things from heat to light that need it. And they don't see me again till the next day. So I knew out of the gate that I could not use domes. So we found a method, because so many flowers are surface sown and people struggle with this, is that laying wide weave burlap. And again, that does come free in our complete kit, but you can find it over on our website. It's wide weave burlap that not only helps to, we just lay it on, you sew your blocks, you put them on the heat mat. Burlap will be laying on top of this after we get off of here. You just lay the burlap down. Tomorrow morning, I pull the burlap back, water, take care of what I have to do, and just lay the burlap back down. It just traps moisture. But the most important thing, it allows air to get in there. So you're not creating like a terrarium, which just invites so much fungus and disease potentially in the right environment. And I just know that I would be the first to do that. So that is the story on soil blocking. There's tons of resources. Check out the Gardener's Workshop. Now I want to show you our success story, right? And I mean, we've had lots of successes here this morning. So let me just move this. So y'all have been a part of my early bird sunflower program, where we've learned that we've always, as growers, because it's the quickest, fastest, most economical way to start sunflowers indoors. We do it in 128 plug trays. And then we plant the sunflowers out in the garden when they're 2 to 3 weeks old. And I have some to show you. So let's take a look here. So these are the ones that we started together. When did we start these? 313. Sorry, y'all, I can barely read. And so this is 5 different varieties. And let's look. Are there roots coming out? Just starting to come out. And so I'm going to put y'all down so you can see this a little bit better. So this is a 128 plug tray. And, you know, in our high production years, we planted 10 of these every week. But back then, I only grew Pro Cut Orange. It was the #1 seller, and it was the only one we offered at that point in time. This, because we are now in a much more downsized portion of our business, right? We are only starting 1 tray a week. Up until the last 5 years before we stopped production, we planted 4 to 5 of these every week to support our subscriptions and our members only market here on the farm. Now we're growing them for exactly what I'm doing right here, for educational purposes, photography, and planting out in the garden, and testing, and all kinds of good stuff. So this is 5 different varieties. Let's see if we can get it so you guys can kind of tell. I might have to hold it up. So you can see at this end, these are just a little bit shorter. This is the white light. This is the gold light. This is the sunfill. And this is the lemon. And what is this? Oh, this is the sunfill. And lemon. Oh, peach. Sorry, y'all. Peach. And so these are the 5 that we decided. So let's get rid of these so we can talk about the actual why I chose those. So what I think about when I'm sowing sunflowers is, what season are they going to be blooming in? So what kind of colors do you need? And all those colors that I just read off are all like perfect spring colors, right? The white, the gold light, which is my favorite, is just like the emblem that you see here on your screen. It's got the green center and the gold petals. That goes with everything. And when you grow it at the spacing, and particularly at this time of the year when the days are shorter, the blooms are only about this big, and people think they're blooming Gerber daisies, but they last a lot longer than Gerber daisies. So let's grab our tray. And so this is a tray, the 128 plug tray, and it is filled with not blocking mix, which is a special mix. You can find the ready-made and the recipe over on the gardenersworkshop.com. And you will find out what that mix is. This is just simply a mix of 50% of any potting mix and 50% compost. I will say this particular mix is still kind of heavy in cocoa core, which I'm quickly not becoming a fan of that, y'all. And so first thing we're going to do is label this. So that's what I'm going to be doing while I'm talking to you. So our experiment has been the last few years that we found out that sunflowers, you can push the envelope with them a little bit more than we ever dreamed that we could. They are not a cool flower, but they are definitely tolerant. Sorry, y'all, it's hard to even talk and write at the same time. Isn't that bad? Peach. That you can plant them out with plant transplants, not seeds, y'all, not seeds. You will not get a seed to germinate out there in these cool temperatures. What's the last one? Oh, sunfill. So by planting transplants out in the garden, sorry, y'all, I'm almost done. Okay. By planting transplants out in the garden and giving them a little protection, here's my goal. Here's the bottom line, and this is what you need to figure out. My goal is to plant transplants that are 2 to 3 weeks old. So those that we just saw back here, these over here, are just, let's give it a test. I'll give it all right. See how I pulled on the stem and it came right out? Sorry, y'all, camera's backwards. It makes me crazy. They're perfect. These are perfect to be planted. I think Bobo may be planting these on Monday. That's how I know when to plant them. 2 to 3 weeks, you do not want to pull on them and have it feel like you're getting ready to rip the stem out of the soil. So when you plant them out at 2 to 3 weeks, so those will be planted outside, 5 rows to a 30-inch wide bed, 5 rows across, and in the row 6 inches apart, and that grows the perfect size. All right, so let's put this tape on while I'm sitting here talking about this. So the added protection that you have got to provide at this time of the year, because it's colder now, we're pushing the envelope. Warning, this is a risk. If you have a fluke, crazy weather kind of thing come through, you may lose them. But guess what? It's worth the gamble, because to have sunflowers, 3 to 6 weeks earlier than you would have by waiting for the traditional planting time, holy cow. I mean, it's pretty major. So this is Peach. I'm putting her down at the end because I want to do 4 rows of her. Have you seen? And here, the Peach Pro Cut. You can find all of the Pro Cut seeds over on our website, all the colors. And the Peach is the latest and greatest and in short demand. So if you find it, you better buy it, because it's not available much. All right. So now if I was in high production, there would just be 1 full tray of each color. I'm doing like 3 to 4 rows of each. So that's why I'm putting so many pieces of tape, but you'll just do whatever you got here. So let's start with the Peach, and let's have a look here. So I can't do that. It's going backwards. Y'all, I'm so backwards. Let's start with the right ones. Gold Light. So I am literally just going to drop 1 seed on the surface of this tray. This tray was not pre-watered. Y'all, what I find is the secret for me to being a successful and profitable flower farmer is to find the quickest, fastest, easiest way to do everything. The less steps any step that you eliminate, what's next? White light. Any step you eliminate, which when you're not busy, when you're not harvesting, when you're not selling, when you're not delivering, when you're not doing all the rest of the story, it's not a big deal. But the day all of those other things start, friends, I'm here to tell you, you just won't even believe the things you won't have. Things you're chomping over right now, you won't even be thinking about in 2 months. You don't have time. So I'm just dropping 1 seed on the top. I'm trying to be quick because this is really a quick job. And when you make your weekly sunflower sowing quick and easy, that means it empowers you to be able to do it. Because again, when you're busy, you cannot let this fall by the wayside, y'all. You cannot sell them if you do not plant them. And sunflowers can float a bouquet business, meaning you can puff up any bouquet with an added sunflower or 2 when they're the nice, small, perfect bouquet size. You just can't imagine how, and people I've never had a complaint saying, oh, I don't want that many sunflowers in my bouquet. People are like, yes, not only are they beautiful, bright, and shiny, they have a super long base life. What do we need next? Sunfill. So let me tell you about sunfill. Where is sunfill? Here it is. Sunfill is the sunflower that we grow not for the petals once it opens. We grow it for the bud that develops, which is just layered with sepals. Sepals are those green layers what are on the outside of a bud They literally almost look like a succulent. And they are amazing bouquet filler, y'all. A filler that you can actually time it out. You can schedule it each week along with your other sunflowers. That's what we do. I mean, again, no one has ever said we have too much filler. I mean, filler is just a priceless thing to have, right? So now I'm doing peach. All right. So I think I need to move this. All right, so now we're doing peach, and then we're going to take the next step here. So before I do that, so the method to our business madness the last decade has been that we have planted, we planted 1,200 sunflowers a week for 26 weeks. It floated our supermarket. Oh, I dropped a seed. And because it's a peach one, they're in short supply, so I'm not going to waste one. Sunflowers literally boosted our business, not only financially because of our commercial customers, our florists. I mean, you can do the math. 1,200 sunflowers a week on an average of $1.25 wholesale per stem. You know, you can do that math of what an impact it had on our daily business to have these available, to not only poof up our standing orders and commercial orders, but to also feed into our supermarket bouquet business. We sold to 2 supermarket chains, 6 stores on each chain, as well as 23 florists. And sunflowers saved our lives. And then add into that our members only market and our subscription service. We had no short supply of need for flowers, and those sunflowers literally saved our lives. So what I'm doing now is just literally pushing the seeds about halfway down into the mix. And so now what's going to happen is I'm going to, so here are some other early bird special circumstances. So let's just jump ahead. When you're normally starting sunflowers, you know, if we were starting them, you know, starting in about 3 weeks, I would do the same steps, plant like I just planted. I will take these into my grow room. I will water the trays really well, and I'll pop these trays onto a seedling heat mat. That's what fuels them to get started right out of the gate. You warm the soil up, and it just makes more seed. That's why you see all this uniform, beautiful growth over here, because they were all born at the same time. That's what a seedling heat mat does for you. Normally, in season, once they 50% or more pop, then I take them from the heat mat and we would just put them right outside on the porch out in full sun. And that's where they would live until they were planted in the garden at 2 to 3 weeks. Can't do that now. It's too cold outside. They won't grow very well. They might grow, but not much. I mean, it defeats the whole purpose of all this early starting business. So you have to have an indoor support system to make the most of this. Why are these not this tall? Because they've been under a grow light for 16 hours a day. And you have to have those special tools to make this early bird sunflower starting success. And so what's going to happen now, I'll take this in, I'll water it in really well. And, you know, if you are new to taking care of plug trays, you should water what you think is thorough watering. And then you need to dig out 1 cell tray and see how wet it is. Did it go all the way through? I'm a believer of double dipping always. I always double water everything, not soil blocks, containers and plug trays. You water, then you go back to the beginning and you water all over again. They're draining, the water's running through. It's that second dip that really gives them. So then they'll go on a seedling heat mat. And then once 50% or more pop, then I'm going to pop them under grow lights. Then when they get to this way over here, where they're ready to be planted, Bobo will plant them outside in the garden, but they will immediately be hooped and covered with a row cover because I mean, I've mentioned in weeks past, I mean, we had some last year that went below freezing. They were row covered. I actually threw an extra cover on them for that 2 nights. I think it was 28 degrees or something like that. And they did great. I mean, we made Mother's Day last year, y'all. Do you know how huge that was for us to be able? Our cool flower bouquets are beautiful, but they lack that big round disc flower. Not only am I growing carnations this year, that heirloom, which you can find that on our website too, which are doing fabulous. By the way, we fall planted and we're very early spring planting them again to see how that goes. To have that round zinnia, Gerber, daisy type flower shape is huge for business. And so that's what the early bird sunflower is doing. So now I'm going to answer your questions after we take a look at the salvia. And so I want to say, so we've been doing salvia cuttings. I guess that's probably 3 weeks worth. You'll see it in a minute, y'all. It's not a pretty sight. So I've been doing a few every week. Salvia leucanthia and Salvia mexicana. They're plants that you start from cuttings, not from seed. And they're great late summer bloomers. They're great for bouquets. Commercial customers love them. You have to learn that you harvest them later than earlier once you figure all that out. And you can start a boatload of cuttings off of a mother plant. What is a mother plant? A mother plant is a plant that we grow in big containers that grow out on our patio all summer, and we take cuttings from, which you can look back at a previous week. And we just take stems and chop them up into little pieces with a little leaf on them and stick them into a plug tray, which you're about to see. And they root after we dip them into the hormone, which is just rooting hormone, which just speeds up the whole process. And they root. And you can literally make 100-foot beds of this stuff from 1 or 2 mother plants. And we got our initial mother plants from an online garden store. The one that I used was, but they're sold out, I think, already. High Country Gardens. I just bought 3 plants of each, 3 leucanthias and 3 mexicanas. And that's what populates my garden every year. And why do I have to do that? Because I live on the edge. I'm in zone 8A, 7B. And right where we can have winters that'll winter kill it. It is what I call a half-hardy perennial. It will perennialize if it doesn't get winter killed. And some years it will get killed here. Your mother plants are your insurance policy that you'll have a plant to take cuttings from the next year. So let's take a look at the tray. And so basically what happened is it got pushed out of, and this is how things happen to y'all when it gets busy. It got pushed underneath a table in the grow room where it should have never been. And I just didn't see it. And it didn't get watered for like 3 days. And I lost the very first ones, the ones that had the most roots on them. So I'm going to show you guys. See the dead ones in the middle? Those were the most mature. Those were the ones with the most roots. And those couple of days, sunny afternoons, my grow room gets warm. It just really took them out. So on this side is the Salvia leucanthia. You can see that's got a thinner leaf. And this side is the Salvia mexicana. Notice the difference in the leaf shape. So these guys, and they aren't, I'm going to pull one. Oh, it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Let's look. Looky there. There's a little root. So this is some of the very first ones. And so you have to look that up. There's if you have my book, Vegetables Love Flower, there's a great picture of me lifting armfuls of these guys walking down a pathway, which doesn't even look like a pathway. The salvias are level with my shoulders. It is a huge bumblebee crop. If you are a bumblebee nut like I am, you have to go in at the crack of dawn in the morning before the bees really get active in there. So Salvia leucanthia is on the mend, and I'm going to have more next. We're going to do more next week, and let me tell you why I didn't do it this week. So the weather has finally, we think, broken here in southeastern Virginia. My hands are covered in dirt now, y'all. Let me grab a paper towel. And I just pushed the mother plants outside right before this started. And the mother plants were kind of sad. So they live literally in this building all winter, no grow lights, no greenhouse. They just kind of sit over here in the corner and they don't get watered. And because they're in very large containers, they just really survive. They have a really large root system. So I've been cutting off of them. Well, because they're starting to grow and there's no light in here, the stems got really spindly. So I just moved. We're past the chances of a really deep below 28 degrees outside. So I moved them outside. I just gave them a deep watering. So after I get off here, I'm going to actually cut them all back because they're kind of got long, spindly stems. I'm going to give them all a really great dose of the Neptune's seaweed fish fertilizer, which we love. You can find that on our website too. I'm going to mix it in my watering can and give everybody a bubble bath. And that's just going to rejuvenate them. So hopefully, maybe not by next Saturday, but the Saturday after that, we ought to have some nice, healthy stems to continue on with our salvia cuttings. Because I'll tell you what my little plan is, and anybody can do this. I'm planning a couple of just really beautiful hedges out of this stuff. I mean, it's really inexpensive if once you get your first plants, and oftentimes you can find these plants at master gardener sales, plant sales, because they are so easy to propagate and they are not readily available out at garden centers. A lot of master gardeners propagate them and they sell them at their sales. So that's a great way. And actually, one of my Salvia lacanthias came from a local master gardener. And speaking of that, and then I'm going to look at your questions here, friends. You have to check out my podcast today. Rhonda, who is our warehouse manager, who is also a lifelong gardener, very active, like president of the Master Gardener Association here, is master naturalist, and she has this obsession about beneficial insects, just like I do. And it's actually, as we talk about, we did a podcast called Bug Talk, Talking Bugs, Bug Talk. And you have to listen to it. But I will warn you, be prepared for your gardening and your farming life to change and the way you view it. And we share the books that we are just our go-to books. And she and I are going to start doing this now. Our next one, when it comes out, will be about tips about how I'm going to share farmer tips on how to attract beneficials. And she's going to share gardener tips. So please find my podcast, which is called Field and Garden, over on your favorite podcast app, or you can find it on our website if you want to listen there. And we would love to hear what you think about it. And it's really great. I mean, I love Jessica Walliser has written she is like the bug lady. And she's written some great books, and they are my go-to books. And I reference them in there, and can't wait for y'all to listen to that. So I'm going to pull you a little closer here and so let me just take a look and see what questions we have here. So I see we have lots of students, and I see that Amy is just planted her first tray of sunflowers undercover. Way to go, Amy. I mean, let's face it, friends. What's the risk? The cost of a few sunflowers. You obviously have to have a support system. You have to have a heat mat. You have to have grow lights. You don't have to, but to be successful. And then you have to have hoops and row cover. And you can find all of that. We have a hoop kit on our website that can get you all fixed up. So Polly is asking how to find the sunflower emoji. So Polly, down on the keyboard that you're typing on, there's usually a little smiley face. If you tap that, it typically brings up your emoji selection. Oh, thank you, Diane. Diane is from, wait a minute. I tapped it. There it is. She is in Texas, and she said she loves this show, and thank you for sharing. You know what? I really thrive on teaching, which is, what led me to launch all these online courses and schools for flower farming and home gardeners. And I want to just say that my co-instructors other people in the farming industry that, I met through speaking at conferences for years. They're members of the associations, or educational associations that I'm a member of. And we all have servant teacher hearts. And we love farming and gardening and growing and empowering other people. And we thank you, Diane, for sharing that, because that is what drives us. All right. So Katie's asking, do pansies need light to germinate? I have 2 packages saying different things. So Katie, first off, I have never started pansies from seed. I do know for a fact that they are super slow growers. So be prepared for that. But what I would recommend for this, or any seed you're not sure of, is just literally enter those words into a search engine. How to sow pansy seeds. And then you'll kind of read through a few of them and just go to those bigger, more reputable, universities are always good, and some of the botanical gardens, and see what you come up with. All right, so here's Daniel. Oh, wait. Daniel, I have a feeling it's going to be a great season. Hopefully no later frost this year. Working on soil blocks this afternoon. So friends, if you don't know Daniel, Daniel is a flower farmer. He owns Petal Pickers in Greenville, South Carolina. Daniel and I have been friends since he took my course 4 or 5 years ago. And he ships during the pandemic. You want to talk about pivoting your business? Daniel was just ramping his business up when the pandemic shut down all the events, of which he sold to the people that did events. And he just marched right into shipping flowers, retail, meaning if you want flowers for Aunt Sissy in California, you call Daniel, or you go to his website and you order those flowers and they show up. And I'm just sorry I don't have them here with me. He gifted me with a couple dozen tulips this week. Oh my gosh, y'all. They are absolutely phenomenal. And they go through the seasons of different, they'll have ranunculus and all these different ones. And anyway, follow Daniel on social media to keep up. And when you need flowers, he is your man. All right, Carol. Good morning, Lisa. And all, can I set out my zinnias under cover as I have my sunflowers? I'm in Georgia. 8B, night temps in the 50s. So Carol, what a great question. And generally, no. So sunflowers are a warm season tender annual, just like zinnias are. And we have proven through trial and error for over years that sunflowers tolerate the cooler temperatures, but still go on to perform beautifully. Zinnias are not going to do that. Zinnias are really heat lovers. And they resent when they get cool. And when they get cool, they get stressed. And when they get stressed, it makes them more predisposed to disease and pests. Disease meaning mildew, bacteria, spot. So you do not want to put zinnias outside until, this is my opinion, of course, which all of this is my opinion, right? And we're all got one. I don't plant zinnias outdoors without special steps until nighttime temperatures are over 60, nighttime, not talking daytime. Nighttime temperatures are over 60 degrees and holding for 2 weeks. When I look at the 2-week forecast, nothing below 60, then I would plant zinnias. And if I was not, and then I'm planting them into black film, the Bio 360, the biodegradable film that we use, which adds a little bit of warmth on the surface, and then we hoop and cover if it's cooler outside. So you can tweak it a bit, but don't risk it, because you will pay for it for the rest of the season. I mean, that's one thing we don't understand is it's just like how they say kids, those kids that get the great start before 6 years old, they're the ones that just don't hit as many speed bumps in life. It's the same thing with plants. Yes, you can get them over it, but it's a lot of work. Just do it right from the get-go, and part of that is timing of when to plant it. Susan, let's see what Susan has to say here. Buy your needed supplies from the from the Gardener's Workshop. Thank you. Everything I've ordered from TGW has worked great. Seed starting, soil hoops, frost cloth, seed tray, seeds, everything you need. Susan, thank you. You make my heart swell. Y'all, it's overwhelming when people, we just feel like this is what we do. And sometimes, especially when it's busy like now, it's easy for us to forget how it impacts people. So this is Chris. Good morning. Just found you ordering again from you today after receiving my order fast. Do you have a blocking soil recipe? Yes. So if you go to the Gardener's Workshop.com, then go to resources, which is one of the right across the top. And when it drops down, it'll say, what will it say? All things soil blocking is a category. Go there and there's a page of resources. One of those resources includes the recipe and you'll find it there. All right, Carol. Oh, there you go. Somebody, y'all are so good. This Carol's helping Polly find the emoji. So I just see lots of students on here, and it's just so good to see all you guys from all over the world. So I'm just looking for another. Oh, thank you, Susan. I'm glad you enjoy. I see that Jessie, who is one of our team member, is trying to post some of the links that I've mentioned for stuff. So I'm just looking. So Cindy says, my experiment is how early can I get things started and out? So, but what we need to remember, that is great, Cindy. But what you need to remember, it's not just getting them to survive. It's how do they perform? Is it really worth starting them? That's the whole Cool Flowers experiment I'm doing this year. Experiment 1, experiment 2, and there'll be an experiment 3. I know I can get them started, and I know I can get them to survive probably out in the garden. But do they produce? Are they disease and pest resistant? Do they produce long enough stems? And are they abundant enough? I mean, is it worth it? Because frankly, we grow so many warm season tender annuals that they're going to have to do pretty dadgum good to knock some of those guys out of space in my small urban farm, right? So that's so add that to your equation if you haven't already. So Jessica is asking, how long do the seedlings need to be on the heat mat? Does it stay on all day? So Jessica, it is a seedling heat mat, meaning it is made specially for seedlings. And what that means is it has, in most cases, the ones that we sell have built-in thermostats that are triggered off of the air temperature so that it doesn't overheat what's sitting on it. You can't use the heat mats like you and I put on, our back after we finish planting, because you will toast your seeds. And the way you use a seedling heat mat is you plug it in and it stays on 24/7 with those trays sitting right on it, depending on what you're actually starting. You remove the trays from the seedling heat mat once 50% of the seeds in the tray, because you should only put one variety per tray. When you see 50% of them show signs of life, cracking and starting, you move them off of the heat mat over to the grow light. And thank you so much for that question, because that was a really, really good one. All right, so here is Megan. Let's see what Megan has to say. Hello, my snaps were planted out under a polytunnel caterpillar tunnel, and the temperatures dropped to 24 degrees. And even with the cover, they frosted and they have frost burns. Should I take them out? They have 2 true leaves and were super tiny still. Okay, so this is a lot of great questions, Megan. First off, I want to say that I don't ever use caterpillar polytunnels. People really confuse that. I only use hoops with lightweight row cover. You can learn more about that over on our website, and the product page has videos on it. When you put plastic on a tunnel, it 100% changes your role and the environment underneath of it. That means that air and water do not penetrate it like they do when there's no plastic. So now all of a sudden you have to monitor the temperature of that tunnel 24/7 because they can quickly get overheated, as well as you have to irrigate. I typically don't do a lot of irrigating in the winter because my plants are getting, air, for whether it's snow, rain, or whatever's happening. So that's one thing out of the gate that I just really want to point out. And if you planted your snaps and they were small, not as good a size as maybe you would want them to be, and then you had cold, they can get frostbite. But no, I first off would never be so quick to pull something out. I would oftentimes they'll rebound quicker than a new planting would actually take over. So when we plant out particularly cool flowers in the cold of winter, we like to have a minimum of a 3 to 5 inch size plant, more like the 5-inch size when you're planting it outdoors in the cold. So I would keep an eye out. And if you still have time, if you're in that 6 to 8 week window before your last frost date, you're kind of like at the time when you should be planting them. So I would say just leave them and move on to warm season. Y'all, there's nothing wrong with doing that. All right, let's see what else we got. Shannon, seems my flowers have stalled. Some aren't even an inch yet, but are 3 days shy of a month old already. What can be the cause of that? Should I toss them and try again? So Shannon, I'm assuming you're talking soil blocks, and I'm assuming you're talking that they're still inside. Number one reason is watering habits. People keep their soil blocks kind of wet all the time, and that's not the way it should be. Soil blocks should go, because there's no drainage holes, you have to master this a lot more than you do in a plug tray. But soil blocks during a 24-hour period should go from wet this morning when you watered to dry tomorrow morning when it's time to water again. That is a healthy growing environment. If they're staying wet all of the time or moist all of the time, they never really have a dry time. And that's the number one reason. Secondly, and the way you can fix that is by upping the air temperature. And that's another reason plants don't grow. And of course, we water once a week our seedlings with the fertilizer, Neptune's Harvest, seaweed fish. And you can, so those would be the three things: watering, air temperature, and food, right? And I would just correct what you think. You have to change something in your environment is creating this. So if you start over, it's just going to happen again, unless your room naturally warms up because it's warming up outside. So you need to take a step back and see what that is. Amanda says, exactly my problem now. Was going to plant cool flowers this weekend and an unexpected rain hit. So friends, that's another reason that when you really time your starting so that you have wiggle room at the end. I mean, kind of the strategies that I talk about is that I always tend to start later than earlier, so that if I do hit that rain period, I can sit on my plants for another week. Preparing your beds well ahead. I mean, these are some of the things that we address all of that in flower farming school. It is so much more, y'all, than just growing lots of flowers. It's about keeping from losing your mind and growing great flowers and selling them all. And it is deep. Amanda, I have these trays from you and absolutely love them. I bet she's talking about the green ones. And check them out on our website. I have no idea if they are listed as out of stock, which I suspect they are. Get on the list. So you're welcome. I'm just reading through, trying to see where there's a question. So here is something. Shelly's asking, what is your opinion of using vermiculite to retain moisture on the surface sown seed versus the wide weave burlap? You know, Shelly, I have never done that, but you don't know until you try it. Here's one thing that you're going to learn about me. I have a very open mind. Whatever works for you is what I want you to actually do. And so that's just one more product I have to have and have more of it available. So that's why I've just never had vermiculite on hand to really try it, right? So if that works, great. And that sounds like a great idea. It sounds like it probably could. And there you go. You know, so there's different ways to do everything. Y'all don't ever close your minds. So somebody's asking, does Celosia go on a heat mat and at what temperature? So the heat mat that I have has a built-in thermostat, and that it means that it's triggered off of, it warms up to 15 to 20 degrees warmer than the surrounding air temperature. And that means that if it's 70 degrees in my room, that room's going to go to 8, that heat mat's going to go to 85, and Celosias need a minimum of 75 degrees below their heat. Below their soil. So 75 to 85 is like a perfect seed starting for Celosia. How do you get the sunflowers out of the plug trays? We just demonstrated that. I think literally when they're the right size, they just pull right out. We got to get off here, y'all. I try not to go over an hour, and I'm going to try to answer as many questions as I can. But just remember, I'm here every Saturday morning at 11 on Facebook and YouTube streaming, and I will get in here and get your questions in early because this could really go on for a long time. So this is a great question. I want to answer this one. Jessica asks, when do we know when to use a plug tray versus soil blocks? You get an A for the question today. That is such a great question that most people, that doesn't often get asked. So let's first talk about soil blocks. The two soil block sizes that I use are the small 3/4 inch, which we'll look at. That is this. That it has the snapdragons that were just born in it. That is what I use when I'm using soil. I use soil blocks 95% of the time overall, almost as much as I possibly can. And of those 95% soil blocks, almost all of the time I'm using the small blocks. However, for 2 or 3 exceptions, and that's when the seed is too big to go into the small block, and the seed really does not like to be disturbed, like sweet peas, I will use the 2-inch soil block instead of using like a plug tray. I know that's kind of complicated, but I'll talk more about that. So seeds that are eligible to be started in a 2-inch block would also be ones that are potentially ones that I would start in a plug tray. Some seeds just don't perform as well, in our opinion, in plug trays as they do in soil blocks. Sweet peas being a great example of that. A 2-week-old sweet pea vine started in a 2-inch block and planted in the garden like a zinnia and a sunflower at 2 to 3 weeks old will rock your world. I mean, it is totally amazing. However, we only start like a handful of sweet peas. We don't start but like 20 plants or something, 25 plants. Sunflowers, on the other hand, the seed is too big for a small block, so it would need to go in the 2-inch blocker. Well, y'all, when we were starting 1,200 a week or even 500 a week or even 128 a week, that is super labor intensive to make all those blocks. It is not practical. This is where open-mindedness really comes into play. I look at that and say, okay, as long as I get them started in the plug tray and plant them in a timely manner, meaning within that 2 to 3 week window. Yes, I've pushed it longer. Yes, they suffer a little bit, but they still come out okay. They do great. So I use all of the methods. So we use plug trays when we need high volume of those plants that would require a 2-inch blocker. Calendula, we plant in the 2-inch blocker. It'll fit in the small block, but it just does not do well at all. We start tomatoes, peppers, and eggplant in the small block. And they're one of the only, with the exception, and eucalyptus we do this with. All 3 of those, tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, and eucalyptus, fall here. We start them in the small block because we have such high germination and such great root development in the small block. We then pot it up from the 3/4 to the 2-inch block to grow on. All of them is nicer to have a nicer size plant. Eucalyptus is super slow, so that's why you pot that one up. But the rest of them, I mean, you have not grown tomatoes till you grow them and pot them up in the 2-inch block and let them grow. I'm telling you, roots that'll bring a tear to your eye. And with that, friends, I am going to wrap this up. I don't think I said this, so I want to say it. The other part of the early bird, my goal in the early bird sunflower planting is to get my transplants in the garden 3 weeks before my last expected frost date, because that's the least likely to have a deep dive below in the 20s. And my experiment has panned out. Friends, please head over to thegardenersworkshop.com. Lots of free resources. Please subscribe to my channel. Follow me on social media. I do lives a couple times a week, and I would love to answer your questions. My podcast is Field and Garden, and you'll also find that right here on YouTube and also on Facebook. It is automatically posted there each week. So friends, join the seed starting family because it grows awesome plants. And with that, I'm going to sign off and thank you all for joining me. And until we meet again, friends, ciao.